Welcome in or welcome back to another episode of Roundball Roundtable. This is the second one that I'm doing. I am trying to get in the habit of having more of these, and I figured since we're a quarter of the way through the season, it's a perfect time to start up again. I put out a post on all of my socials asking for questions for this kind of video, so if you aren't following me already, be sure to do that so you can be on the next one. I really do appreciate everybody submitting questions. Let's just hop into the first one. The first one I have is from my buddy Collin over on TikTok that asks, who are my top 5 players to watch in the league right now? And I have really insane homer answers like Jaylen Brown, like Javon Carter, Deuce McBride, Javon Small, like all those guys. I'm going to exclude those and just give you 5 guys who I really enjoy who did not go to my favorite university and who do not currently play for my favorite team. A very easy number 1 for me is going to be Lonzo Ball, and while he is having a very bad year offensively, his defense and his playmaking is still top-notch, so he's a clear number 1 for me. 2 through 5 kind of get a little shaky for me, mostly because some of my favorite players like Domantas Sabonis have been hurt essentially all year long, so I kind of have to reshuffle the list a little bit. In that same vein, though, I love being able to watch a guy work at the high post, be a facilitator, so you're going to have to put Alperen Sengun up there. Unironically, Andrew Wiggins is also up there for me. Been a big fan of him since he came out of Kansas, and I feel like his career gets overlooked a lot because he was a bust as a number 1 pick, but he's had a really good career. And Andrew Wiggins is going to be the answer to another question we're going to have later down the road, but he is so good offensively, defensively, and yeah, while he's not giving you 25 a night like you would like a number 1 pick to, he is a perfect role player. There is one rookie that I enjoy watching more than the rest of them, and if you follow me on any of my socials, you know the answer, and that's Cedric Coward. I've been high on him the entire time. I came out here definitively and said that he's going to have the second best career out of anybody in this draft, and while there have been other players that have really impressed as of late, Dylan Harper, Con Knippel, I still hold on to that belief. And this one may be a weird shout, but to round out the 5, it's got to be Zach LaVine. He is just so good at putting the ball in the hoop. For his standards, his stats are down this year, and I think part of that is the vibes around the Sacramento Kings, but he's still averaging 20 points a game and shooting 38% from 3 on like 7 attempts a game. And over the last couple of years, he's been shooting like 40% from 3 on a lot of attempts a game. He's just so overlooked and underrated as a scorer, and I honestly don't understand why he doesn't get more love. Next, we have the homie Jacoblocks over on Twitter who says, which teams do you think have the fakest start to the year, teams that you think turns it on or falls off a cliff? The answer is a little complicated, I think. The team that I think is going to fall off the cliff that they are currently on, and is one that I predicted way before the season started, the Suns are definitely not going to be a 7th seed by the time the season's over. They're 15-12. At the time of writing this video, and they've had some really cupcake wins. Now, they've had some impressive wins. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they haven't, but here are some of the wins that they have picked up along the way. The Kings and the Clippers twice, the Jazz, the Pacers, the Pelicans. Like, do I need to go on? This team is bad. Devin Booker is great. They have some really good role players too, but they just don't have enough to be 15-12 good. Now, the opposite side of that coin, for me, I think it has to be the Cavaliers. I don't think that they are 8th seed bad. This team, for the most part, has just been riddled with injury, and I think that plays a huge factor in the fact that they are 15-14. Now, they're still flawed, don't get me wrong. Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley have essentially played all year, but that's kind of it. Jared Allen has only played in 18 games. Darius Garland's only played in 13. As I mentioned before, Lonzo Ball has played in games, but he doesn't look like himself. And Max Strus hasn't played one single game this year. Again, this team is flawed. I think that they are a worse team than what they were last year, but I'd have to imagine that if everybody was healthy, they'd be at worst a 4th seed. So I would expect here in the next couple weeks they turn it up a little bit and they get back to form. Next we have Eamon Cassels. Shout out to the Cassels cast asking, of the 3 bottom feeder teams in the West, which do you think will be a playoff team next? And at the time of recording, the bottom 3 are the Kings, Clippers, and Pelicans. Is there a way that I can answer none of them, that I don't think that any of them are going to be a playoff team next? All 3 of them have such grim futures. The Kings are an absolute dumpster fire. They have a weird roster. They have an older roster. They need to blow everything up, and trade away what they can. I just don't think that they have it in them. And the Clippers are in the same boat, but there was a report that came out that said that they were going to hunker down and wait until 2027 to theoretically bring a new free agent in. And both of those things are so fluid, they don't really have a timetable for it, so I'm gonna have to go with the Pelicans, as weird as that sounds. As I'm recording this, the video hasn't released yet, but I just released a video talking about how I think that Derek Queen could be the future of the Pelicans franchise. And while he hasn't earned the spot next to Nikola Jokic or Alperen Şengün or any of those guys, I feel like he has that sort of game in him, and you can already see it in the Pelicans games that he can get the best out of his teammates. So if you start surrounding him with some younger talent, like you start supplementing the talent that you have on the roster with guys like Jordan Poole and Zion and Trey Murphy III and Herb Jones, if you supplement those guys with other players that you can grow with, I think the Pelicans are going to be really good in the future. I still think it's going to take a while, probably 4 to 5 years, but I'd say in that time, around 2030, 2031, we're probably looking at the Pelicans as a potential home court advantage team in the West. Next, we have Justin from J Talks Hoops, who asks probably the best question out of this whole bunch. How many first-round picks can the Chicago Bulls get for Jevon Carter? And I have to ask, how do you put a price on a sunset? What does eternal happiness actually cost? I just think that there are questions that you can't answer. I have a theory that the Chicago Bulls aren't playing Jevon Carter the minutes that he very clearly deserves, because they don't want the rest of the world to know how good he is and how bad they swindled the Bucks to get him a couple years ago. Let's imagine for a second that we live in bizarro world where Jevon Carter is actually on the trading block and not an MVP candidate. I would have to imagine that a team that has a ton of draft capital would be the only ones that could come to the table. And the first team that comes to mind, obviously, that has a ton of draft capital are the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I would be willing to bet that Jevon Carter is the one missing piece that would be the difference between the Oklahoma City Thunder repeating and missing the playoffs entirely. So just based off of that, probably 12 first-round picks, maybe? 12 first-round picks and J-Dub for Jevon Carter, and I don't know, let's be fair to Oklahoma City, Coby White. I think that works out great for both parties and is a very equal trade. Now, obviously, that's a bit. There's a character that I play, even though I very much do love Jevon Carter that much. I just don't think at this point in his career he's worth a first-round pick because he doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. But there has to be a scenario where some team needs a 3-and-D point guard that's on an expiring contract and would give you a top 20 protected first-round pick. So at best, maybe one. But again, if Oklahoma City actually wants to win a championship again, maybe they give up 12 first-round picks for him. Next, we got my buddy Riley over on Discord. Join the Discord. That asks, what would you change about the mainstream NBA media? The short answer is I would put myself in the mainstream media. The shortest answer is that you have to put people on the air that actually give a shit about the game. This year is actually a really good example of that with what we've seen from the Amazon broadcast and the NBC broadcast. It is just so refreshing to see a group of people who actually like basketball, who like the NBA. And I've said it on here before, and I'm not going to change my mind about it. I am an Ernie Johnson fan. I think that he deserves better, but I haven't thought about inside the NBA one single time. Now, a lot of that is my disdain for Shaquille O'Neal, but Charles Barkley doesn't do a fantastic job of uplifting the game. Kenny is the exact same way. Really, Ernie is the only guy who does that on a consistent basis on that show. And we saw Adam Silver essentially allude to the fact that he got pretty tired of the old guard shitting on the new product. I'd like to think that I've kind of been associated with a really good amount of creators online who actually love this game. And as long as those kind of people are the ones that are getting the clicks, that are getting the views, that are getting the follower counts, if those people still prosper, I think that the NBA media has a chance. But if we allow the people who actually don't like the game to prosper, if we allow the people who just want clickbaity titles, if we are just going to allow the guys who are there to shit on the product to win out, this landscape is doomed. But luckily, we have guys like Kenny Beecham with the Numbers on the Board crew who actually like the game and who are getting mainstream looks. So while I think that it is going to take more change to come for this to be an overall positive, we are heading in the right direction. My buddy Finn, who runs Benchmob blog and twowaytalents.com, please go give those a look. They're going to be in the description below. He asked, what would your philosophy be if you were an NBA coach? And I think if you asked me this like 2 years ago, I would have had a definitive answer, but I don't think I do anymore. Because I read this book a couple years ago called Basketball is Jazz by David Thorpe. If you're even remotely interested in coaching, I definitely recommend it. David has had a ton of basketball experience, whether that is through coaching or just being around the game. And basketball really is like jazz. You can't be so rigid. You can't put parameters around it. The biggest thing I took away from that book as it pertains to coaching is you have to allow your player personnel to mold what your philosophy is. Like, for instance, if I had a big three of Luka Doncic, Domantas Sabonis, and Michael Porter Jr., I wouldn't be running a very defensive-heavy scheme, but we would be trying to run up the score. Probably a target score of 135 a game, bunch of transition points, get up and down, make sure there are a bunch of drag screens and a bunch of elevator screens in our offense. That's the kind of personnel that you have to be liquid to. And then the inverse of that, if I have Rudy Gobert, Amon Thompson, and Dyson Daniels, I'm probably not running a whole bunch of offense. I'm probably going to be hoping that we can limit the other team to like 110 points a game. So basketball is a beautiful game, and jazz is a beautiful genre. It has to be cohesive. It has to be less rigid. It has to be liquid. But if you're going to twist my arm and make me pick, two of my favorite kinds of basketball that I've been able to watch over the years are the press Virginia teams at WVU, where you ran 12 guys, you pressed all game long, you were hoping that you forced them into 20 turnovers. And then the other team that I really loved, and I definitely don't think that it would work in today's NBA, but I still love nonetheless, are those late 2000s, early 2010s Magic teams where it was Dwight Howard surrounded by Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu, Jameer Nelson, and Vince Carter, just surrounding a dominant post player with 4 shooters. Again, I don't think that kind of basketball would work in today's NBA, but I would give it a try. Finn actually has a second question, and he asked, what are my top 5 favorite Celtics moments of the 2020s? Number 1's pretty easy, but I think I'm going to have to think about the other 4. I'm not going to bury the lead here. The biggest moment for a Celtics fan in the 2020s is the championship of 2024. It was very vindicating because of all the shortcomings that we had leading up to that, but I think the most rational Celtics fans knew that when we made all those Eastern Conference Finals, when we made the NBA Finals against the Warriors, it wasn't our time yet, but boy, 2024 really felt nice. A real shame that we couldn't get Marcus Smart a championship ring, but nonetheless, 2024 championship, that's got to be number 1. And then these other ones are kind of in no particular order. They just are the ones that come to my mind naturally. One of the first ones is when we signed Kemba Walker. And while that ultimately didn't really turn into anything, I do love Cardiac Kemba. I grew up in an era where WVU played in the Big East, so we played UConn all the time. I watched Kemba Walker. I watched his March Madness moments. I loved him as a player, and I really wanted nothing but the best for him, especially while he was in Charlotte, because he deserved it. And then when he came to the Celtics, I thought, wow, we have a chance to deliver Kemba Walker a championship. Again, that didn't turn into anything, unfortunately, but still, being able to watch him work in a pick and roll game, I watched him work with Daniel Tice so often on a high pick and roll, and he needs just like this much to pull it. And that's really a skill that I loved watching. The next one that comes to mind for me is Jason Tatum scoring 51 against the Sixers in 2023 to head back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, I have a lot of respect for Sixers fans. I'm mutuals with some Sixers fans, but it's fuck Philly over here. So being able to do that to them to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, so nice. This one may be a little weird, a little unconventional, but the entirety of the bubble was really nice as a Celtics fan. And I don't want to downplay all of the travesties that happened during the pandemic. That is obviously a very serious situation. But if we could just block that out for a second, if we could just think about the pure hoops that we got to witness for those couple of months and then leading into the next season where it was limited capacity, so good for basketball. As an entertainment product, I love being able to hear the guys communicate on defense, on offense, hear the coaches be able to yell at their players to run particular sets. I loved it. And we had a pretty good run. I don't want to talk about what Bam Adebayo did to Jason Tatum, but nonetheless, I feel like the bubble, again, excluding the travesty, was a pretty good experience. And then to round out the top 5, I think it has to be Jaylen Brown this year, because again, that's very vindicating. I've said since 2017 that while Jason Tatum may be the better basketball player between him and Jaylen Brown is our most important basketball player. And I've always kind of felt like he's had this ability to average 28, 5, and 5 and be on a good basketball team. And while we did start out pretty rocky this year, it's starting to shape out in the form. At the time of recording, we are 4th in the East right now. We're only 2 games back from the 2nd seed. So I really think we have an opportunity here to be very good without our best player. Now, that is in no way an endorsement of Jason Tatum coming back early to see if we can get wrecked by the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals, but I do like what this team has this year. I think it's going to be a really good building block for next year. Having Jaylen Brown have this Scottie Pippen year, Derek White being a second option, Peyton Pritchard doing what he does. Having these guys expand their roles a little bit is going to be super beneficial for when Jason Tatum does come back. Because I think something that doesn't get talked about enough is that we don't know what Jason Tatum is going to look like. I think that for whatever reason, we assume that he's going to look like Kevin Durant, like the Achilles never happened. And I just don't think that that's going to be the case. Jason Tatum at his best is an all-NBA caliber guy. I think we're going to get about 85% of that if we're lucky. So you're going to have all these other pieces supplement that other 15% that we're missing. And because of this year, we're going to have that. We're going to be ready for it next year. And then to round this out for this episode, we have 3 questions from Mark over on Discord. Again, join the Discord. The first one, what trade should the Lakers make? And the biggest glaring weakness for this team is very clearly a 3-and-D wing. So you're going to have to focus on that. I know that the Lakers have been tied to a couple players, most notably Herb Jones from the Pelicans. And I just don't think that having a non-factor on offense is beneficial to the way that Luka Doncic wants to play basketball, lest we forget he is the future of this team. So I think you need someone on your team that does a little bit of both, and I think a very good answer, again, someone I talked about earlier, is Andrew Wiggins. Now, Andrew Wiggins is older, I'm not going to pretend like he's not, but having that championship experience, the fact that he's been in the league for a decade, that's going to be super valuable to this team. So if you are running out a lineup of DeAndre Ayton, Luka Doncic, LeBron, Andrew Wiggins, and Austin Reeves, I feel like that's pretty good. I feel like that's pretty dangerous. Andrew Wiggins can still defend at a really elite level, can still knock down the 3, and again, that experience is going to be invaluable to this team going forward. I also think that he's probably a little cheaper in draft capital than a Herb Jones right now. The next question up is, what are your ideal homes for the point guards on shaky ground, Ja, LaMelo, and Trae Young? This is a great question, but I also think it's a very weird question because I don't necessarily think that they fit anywhere else other than where they're at currently. I've been pretty critical of Ja Morant in the past for, I think, a very good reason. We're pretty deep into his career now. He's certainly not a rookie. He is approaching veteran territory, and he's not a good defender. He's not a great playmaker. He's not a great rebounder. He's not a great three-point shooter. And his one skill that he has, being able to attack the rim, he is doing at a career low percentage. So he's not great this year. And while I do think some of that can be fixed with a new location, a change of scenery for him, I just don't think that he is the kind of player that you can turn into a role player. I feel like you have to revolve the offense around him. And I kind of feel like that's the answer for the other two as well, LaMelo and Trae Young. I am going to give different answers, but that's kind of the general theme. To give you an answer for Ja Morant, I know that he's been attached to the Kings. And if they're going to blow it up, I feel like that makes sense. If you're going to get rid of Domantas Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, putting Ja Morant in that scenario where, again, you could build an entire system around him could be really good. And I think a purple Ja jersey would be really nice. LaMelo, again, is in the same situation because he's not a good defender. I love watching him play. He's fun. I'm not going to pretend like he's not. He is a fun watch. But you have to build the system around him. You can't make LaMelo a role player. And I want it to be very clear. I do not think that LaMelo Ball can be the best player on a championship team. However, if you're going to blow it up, he has been attached to the Clippers, and I think that would be a really nice story for him. An LA kid coming back home, even if it's not for the 1A team, I think that would be really cool. And for Trae Young, I think it's a little unfortunate. It very much seems like the Hawks are ready to transition from Trae Young to Jalen Johnson, which I think is the correct move for the record. Maybe the Nets, if I was going to pick a team that has kind of already blown it up, but if they aren't going to do that, if you want to add him to a team that is trying to keep a superstar, let's say, Milwaukee would be pretty cool. Now, the pick and roll scenario between him and Giannis, while on paper looks great, we saw it with Dame and it didn't work, so I'm not going to sit here and act like it will, but just the star power between Trae Young and Giannis would be pretty nice, and it could theoretically convince Giannis to stay. And then the last one before we get out of here, which top 4 seed in each conference is kidding themselves and need to consider massive changes or blowing it all up? And for those who are playing at home, the top 4 seeds in the East at the time of recording are the Pistons, Knicks, Raptors, and Celtics, and in the West are the Thunder, Nuggets, Spurs, and Lakers. I want to start off with the West because that's probably the more difficult conversation to have. The real answer is none of them. I think all of them are true contenders, especially how they're playing this year. The Lakers are a very flawed team, but they're still 19-7. Luka Doncic has MVP numbers. Austin Reeves is stepping up. LeBron's playing this super Iguodala role, which has been really beneficial for them. The Spurs are ready to compete here in the next couple of years, Wemby and Steph Castle and Dylan Harper just need reps. The Nuggets are ready to go right now, and even though 6 losses seems like a lot compared to the Thunder, who only have 3, they're still a very dangerous team. And then the aforementioned Thunder look like they're going to waltz through the league yet again. If I have to pick one, I think the answer has to be LeBron. But it's not because he's playing bad. I think it's just because he's so old. You can't rely on a 41-year-old player who's making $1 billion a year to be your third option, to be your super Iguodala. If you could take his salary and disperse it to better role players, I think that this team would be better off in the long run. So it has to be the Lakers in that sense. But the Lakers are still playing fantastic despite all of those things that I just said. And then the East, for as much as I don't want to say it, I think it has to be the Raptors. Again, for a lot of the reasons that we talked about. The Celtics look like they're going to make a run next year if Jason Tatum comes back healthy. Maybe that's bias. Who knows? The Knicks are playing really well right now. The Pistons are ready right now. They've taken their lumps. They're ready to compete. So it has to be the Raptors because they're playing pretty well. They're 17-1. The 6 is up. I love what they have going on for them. They do have a lot of question marks, though. I feel like a lot of their wins have come from the power of friendship, and I just don't think that you could win anything important with the power of friendship unless you're like the Thunder where everybody's super close-knit and they're all fantastic role players and you have an MVP candidate. I just don't think that that's the case for the Raptors because you have Emmanuel Quickley making so much money, who, in my opinion, has not lived up to that contract. Grady Dick also doesn't seem like he is ready to be one of those guys that you drafted in the lottery. But the biggest question mark for me watching the Raptors is, what are you going to do with this three-headed monster in RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, and Brandon Ingram? Because again, I love it on paper. I think that this could work on paper, but there's a hierarchy here. Brandon Ingram is that guy. It seems like he made the very correct decision to go and hoop in Toronto, but that's forcing Scotty Barnes to take a step back. It's forcing RJ Barrett to take an even bigger step back. And if those two were on better contracts, if they were on less lucrative contracts, and you can use that extra money to invest into other better role players like we were talking about with the Lakers, I feel like this could be a different scenario for them. But since it's not, it's just a lot of money to wrap up into 3 players for probably a second-round exit if they're lucky. I don't want to be that negative about the Raptors because I do have a soft spot for Toronto and Canada in general, but that has to be the answer. But that's going to do it for this episode of Roundball Roundtable. Really appreciate everybody who chipped in questions. I feel like I am part of a very tight-knit community of content creators, so I am going to put all of their links in the descriptions below. Again, if you want in on the next one, I'm going to be looking to do more of these in the future. Make sure that you're following me on all socials and interact with me. There is a link in my description where you can check me out. I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, literally everywhere you can think of. And I mentioned it a couple times this video. I have a Discord community that I would love for you to be a part of, and you could be a part of that if you just click the link. But that's going to do it for me today. Be kind, tell somebody you love them, and I'll see you in the next one.
Barely scraping by, trying to stop puffing. I'm trying to be one of the greats.